had a few people on the table, and maybe a few people are like, what is this pink circle in the middle? I'm going to turn myself up. This is Talkaoke. It's a table of chat. Come and take a seat, guys. You can come and chat. If you're having a chat together, share it with the rest of us as well. Okay, you'll join later. Have your coffee first and you'll come and join us. Give us 2 minutes just to get us started off. Why are you here at the Festival of Genomics? What's your name first of all? That's much easier.
I'm Madeline Murta. I'm from Newcastle University. I run the MetaDAC, and in about an hour, once I finish the slides, I will be leading a presentation over in the mezzanine.
Oh, fantastic! So you're going to be doing a talk. So we've actually got a speaker here on the table. What's your talk about?
So it's about data governance. How do you get access to data to UK longitudinal studies, which have samples and genomic and phenotypic data, and they're great studies, but people need to have better access to them. So we facilitate that, along with a number of other institutions.
Okay, so you're talking all about sharing data. I think Mikey's got some questions.
No, are you from because he's from down the road from Newcastle. He's from Durham. And he's also giving a talk. I wonder if are they putting all the northeast people in at the end? When's your talk? When's your talk?
Mine's at 3, so I've got to go in a minute. I'm going to another talk. Are you? No, I'm afraid I'm supposed to go to another talk at 10 to 3, so I'm going to miss it. 10 to 4. Yeah. No, I'm not. I've got it all under control, but I should go soon. Yeah.
Okay, so we've got two speakers. Good luck for your talk. Just to get us started, so if we need some topics that we can discuss on the table, so these people can come and join and discuss problems in genomics. Can you give us just a trend or give us, what should we be talking about?
Oh, you should be talking about participant and patient involvement in decision making about data access.
So participation, involvement and decision making in data access, is that right?
Patient and participant involvement in decision making. Simple as.
Okay, brilliant. So
we were kind of our first session. We were kind of talking about that earlier on. Well, it's a good one to throw in.
10 to 4 on the mezzanine level. So what are your names? Agatha. Matthew. We've got
Mikey.
And I'm Evie, and this is Talkaoke. It's a pop-up talk show where we talk about anything. You guys are the hosts or our panelists, but we just want to know what should we be talking about today? What have you guys noticed? What you guys have
go through what we've talked about so far. We talked. I mean, yesterday we're having a big ethical conversation, talking about whose data is it anyway, and patient consent and all this kind of stuff. We were talking a bit about killing off the older patients to provide more money from the NHS towards genomics. What else were we talking about? What were we talking about today?
Would you share your own data? And do you have a right to your parents' data? Well, should you find out about your child's data?
Also, Evie is an identical twin. And the issue here is her sister Harriet could go rogue on her genome, and there's nothing she could do about it. Well, I don't know, just go to 23andMe or something like that, without her consent. And how does that even work? And do we? This is my personal thing. I don't really think that we own our own genomes. It's something that nature has evolved, and the idea of ownership is kind of a shortcut to the question of control that we're kind of lacking in our society. Because, where does it come from? We didn't. It's not our work that created the genome, is it?
Okay, so there's some cynical looks, maybe.
You're going to make me do this. So I work a lot with patient data, in particular the microbiome. So we have a lot of data. So I agree it's important in terms of patients should have the right to access their own data. So every time that you submit the data, the way to make it more freely available is to give everyone access and open access to their data, which the NHS has now done. You have an own portal where you can go back and easily look at your health records. But that wasn't available for a long time. And companies like 23andMe and etc., they started by keeping it private, and now they're selling it off to other pharmaceutical companies.
Still open.
So yeah, it is
Still
still
access
open.
it yourself.
You still can, but in terms of, but there was a case in America where they were looking for someone that committed a crime, and then they found them basically through 23andMe by tracking them back through their cousins. So essentially, when you're only a few steps away from whoever you need to be able to find, you can find them, which is quite interesting. But no. I think going back to your bit about the killing off older patients, however, I don't know where that came from or why, but as someone that studies the process of aging, I'd rather that didn't happen, because then we don't understand how you get to that point anyway. So, yeah.
Okay, yeah, I think here and then there.
Just to qualify, that was a doctor who was saying that some older patients actually want to die, but that a lot of time and resources spent into keeping them alive when they feel they've reached the end of their lives because of the way, the legal situation, and also our cultural understanding about life and what it is. But he was saying there's a lot of resources go into that when it's not even wanted quite often. So that was the conversation yesterday.
Yeah.
Are you all organisers of this, or do you work on the film? Sorry, I didn't ask that first.
I'm working on the camera.
I'm just a travelling talk show host. I go from place to place. Yeah.
This is your brother that's downstairs currently talking. Okay,
Science of
got it.
Aging, yes,
Okay.
yeah.
So I'm curious, like in terms of your data, would you all happily give over or sequence your genome and give it to research or to the NHS, or are you against it?
I was sort of thought, it's fine, and then everyone sort of, when I last said, I was fine with it, everyone sort of talked me down as convinced me not to do it, so I was a bit odd. I was like, yeah, I should do that, and then they all just started questioning it, so now I don't know.
Agatha, you're in the field as well, so...
Well, I've already given my data to 23andMe, so
Have you analysed it?
I've looked at it.
Okay.
The problem is they don't give it to you they give it to you in raw data, and then there's whatever you can access on their system, which is quite a good system. But
Yeah.
So you have your own raw genome?
yeah, well, no, not the whole genome. It's a SNP panel. It's an array of some description. I have run a pipeline on it before when I was working somewhere else. But anyway, I clearly don't have a problem with sharing my data, because I think that there's more benefit than there is harm.
Okay, so you think there's more benefit? Was there more benefit for you? We've got someone here who's actually shared their data with 23andMe. I think that's great, but like yesterday we had some people who were anti 23andMe.
Well, I mean, I think the issue here is our whole understanding of information, and obviously information is valuable, but in our field, we do talk shows. All of the content we produce, we consider to be belonging to the public. And we come from a tradition, the sort of open source, but more in terms of like art practice or creative practice, where we believe that the information should be shared and it's a common resource. But I think that idea is becoming quite a lot under threat, because people always want to protect information and want to own it and want to make money from the distribution of that information. I think it's not just in genomics. I think it's like a global issue to do really with capitalism and how we want to own everything. But I think actually information should be a shared resource, be it genetic or creative information or whatever.
Do you think information, even your own information, is a shared resource, or is it just something that you own? Is that the only thing you can inherently own in yourself? Why are people protective of their genome data, or not protective? Curious, perhaps.
It's as we said yesterday, it's the Frankenstein effect, and I've stopped using the word mutation now. It's variant. Nobody should ever use that word. You can imagine saying to a patient, "You've got a mutation." You know, the poor chap would probably drop off his chair. He'd probably think, I think people have stopped using things like, I don't know whether you still use SNPs, and I don't know whether
This is an interesting part of it. So
I just use the word variant.
This is interesting, because when I read medical papers, I see more and more variant coming. I'm taught to clinicians, they say variant. But then if you're me, and like in terms of the research thing, I'm like, so what do you mean by variant? Like what does that actually, because then that it's such a broad thing. And I get why when you're saying to a patient and etc., it makes sense. But then when it becomes mainstream in terms of a variant.
Read for hours the difference between a variant and a mutation. The idea is, I suppose a mutation is something that's abnormally found, usually in inherited conditions, whereas a SNP is something that's common and occurs anywhere, and a variant is probably both of those. But if you just use the term variant, that just simply means that it is different. It is not in the CR38 reference human genome.
So you're a clinician, is that correct, I presume, or not?
Yes, I'm now doing a PhD, but I was, yes. All right, I was for many years. I was a surgeon, actually, so...
And in terms of your patients, did anyone approach you asking if they could, or were they interested in the research that was happening behind the scenes and the sharing of the data?
I was at Imperial, so I think when you go to a teaching hospital, you're more likely to say, well, you had medical students there, so I think it is more research orientated. As we mentioned before, I think if you go to a big teaching hospital where there are medical students, where there is research going on, there should be a sign or something at reception saying, look, there may be medical students present. We may use some of your data anonymously in years to come for research, but ultimately it's to benefit the patient, isn't it? We're not doing this for some Machiavellian reason, you know, that we want to create a different human race or something like this. So mutation should never be used, I think.
Okay, so we've had some discussion about language, and then Professor Agatha, you had a...
Yeah, so I think the underlying problem is understanding, that patients maybe don't want to share their data because they don't understand, which drives fear, because who knows what the data might be used for, there's all this fear-mongering around it. But equally, if they got ill and they went to the doctors, they would expect to be treated. Exactly. And the problem is that A, they probably don't understand biology enough to understand why we need the data. B, they don't understand whether the data is going to be used to their detriment. And C, they just don't... Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
Is that a failing of science?
I also think that most people are like Rick, that they haven't... Oops, don't know what that is. They haven't even... That might have been me dropping the mic earlier on. Maybe turn that one off. Yeah. They haven't even thought about it. And so they're not... I think there's a lot of kind of paranoia amongst the kind of institutions that, people are going to complain if we don't get their consent, and, you know, we need to get that. You know, it's almost like a thing that the medical institutions and the scientific are much more concerned about than the average Joe that walks off the street. They just trust the NHS, so they just go, yeah, we'll do whatever you tell us to do.
So we think patients are a lot more trusting, perhaps, than anyone else? Too trusting, yeah.
There's just one person in 1,000 or 10,000 that complains, and they cause a huge kind of ripple effect through the NHS.
So we've got some thoughts maybe about patients don't really care about how they use their data. Some people have given their data already away, and that was... do you find that was useful? Do you think that made you feel more empowered to know about yourself? I'm very
I guess 23andMe is just fun. It's not... No, I have had it done, so...
of your genome. I think there's a company called Helix, isn't there, who's a spin-off of and they will tell you whether you have a risk of coronary heart disease or whether you have a risk of I don't know if you've had that done.
No, I've not had that done specifically. I'd love it. I like all the information. I find it very interesting.
Whether you're Scandinavian or whether you're Icelandic, why did you have it done?
Just because it was a bit of fun, really. And in the end, not very much. But it was still fun. I don't have any major serious normal variants, but no. But equally,
because one of the illegitimate children, one of the kings was illegitimate. They've now found out through DNA testing, and there's an old lady in Australia. They went to her and said, "Actually, you should be the queen right now."
Okay, so you're not a queen, but
So interestingly, when I first did it, my parents were very unsure. They thought, why are you doing this? Afterwards, they realised it was a bit of fun, and they both had it done. They paid for all my grandparents to have it done, and my sister, so the whole family's on there now. And they see it as a kind of, A, it's helping science, but B, we're keeping the information about the grandparents who are half dead and the rest going to be dead soon. So it's...
When you had the test done, did you send any clinical information to 23andMe? I mean, they know how old you are, what your sex is.
Yeah, so that's all mostly optional. They give you a load of questionnaires online. So I filled out all of them just because I'm a scientist. I think the research is really cool. But not everybody has done that.
Your data could then be, I know there's a collaboration between 23andMe and Google, so it's quite likely that the guys at Google probably have your data right now and are some in sub-basement somewhere looking through it very carefully.
Cool. I think that's cool, and it's anonymized, so I'm not worried.
Going back to, I think it was your point about the who owns the data and etc. And you said, should it just be free to everyone? In some ways, I agree. Yes, like open source data will make it everyone better. But by making the data open source, you flip the business model around. So the algorithms that Google, Facebook, etc. that are now releasing for free for anyone to use on your own data will become all private. That's kind of how you see in pharmaceutical companies.
The risk is that because Google and Facebook are collecting so much data from you, it is possible in the future that they will be able to link you to your data. And I've had this on WhatsApp, where I've been in touch with somebody years ago, and on WhatsApp I see a message saying, or on Facebook I see a message saying, do you know this person? And I see their face, and I think, we didn't get on well, he had some disciplinary issue with the hospital, and it's not appropriate for that information to be released to me because I now know where he works. And can you see? The point I make is that now, because through a very nice thing where Facebook are trying to link friends together, in effect, or it could be an old girlfriend, or it could be somebody, or somebody really did not want them to know.
So almost the social data and the medical data actually can kind of morph into something quite unpleasant. I'm going to go to Adhikitha.
Yeah. Well, you're just highlighting the fact that this kind of problem is not specific to healthcare. This is happening across the board.
It's happening there.
Yeah, but if healthcare doesn't do it because they're worried about these issues, all of the other industries are going to forge ahead like they are, Facebook, Google, and healthcare will get left behind. And unfortunately, I don't think that there is a good solution, and maybe sometimes you just have to go with technology and hope that the problems get sorted along the way.
I mean, I read this article in the New Scientist which was about social media and mental health, and that there is another basement, probably next to the Google basement, where they're kind of researching like just the behaviour of people on social media apps can tell you about their mental health state. Which is obviously a really good thing, but a very powerful and dangerous bit of information as well.
I'll give you an example where Google did work, where they picked up an epidemic in North California, an influenza epidemic, because everyone was Googling influenza or Googling flu symptoms into their computers, and they picked it up well before the public health people did, and they were able to notify public health and get resources to that area, like flu jabs and so on, much more quickly than they would have done if they just waited for patients to go and see their doctors and for that information to filter through. So it's interesting that they have that.
You probably hear those stories less than you hear the scaremongering stories about the bad things that have happened with the data.
Yes.
Specifically linked to healthcare, like scares, or more generally?
More generally about problems with open sharing of data and Google knowing everything about you and all of that. You hear the scaremongering things more than the beneficial outcomes. I would have guessed, though I don't have any stats on that.
Well, I'm quite curious. Right? We've got Mike, who's got a thought over here.
I'm just saying, I'm pretty sure Google knows more about me than I know about me. So if you want to know about me, don't ask me, ask Google.
Well, struck me from the conversation is maybe, do you think there's a role for the NHS to have? Should we have an NHS 23andMe, like somewhere? There's obviously a demand for it, and maybe we're just trying to find these solutions in not great ways.
Biobank is a sort of NHS 23andMe because they ask a lot of questions. They even ask questions like, what kind of bread do you eat? Do you eat wholemeal bread? I suppose it's good for GI cancer that you know what sort of bread. But they have something like 4,200 phenotypes. That many different variations. So they have about 50,000 patients, of which they have 4,196 phenotypes. So they have quite a detailed history of every patient. And the other good thing I think about Biobank could be is that you could, instead of going to see your GP and you've got some pain somewhere, you could go onto Biobank and say, I've got this pain here, or I've got this problem here, and not necessarily go and see because you don't see everything. You don't go to your GP about every symptom you have.
Okay, so we're talking about maybe Biobank is. Does Biobank have a marketing problem compared to 23andMe? Has anyone used Biobank or any other kind of these public services?
Yeah, it's not. A Biobank is not like 23andMe. It's a resource or a database that's used there. But one of the problems that we have been beginning to see, especially within any kind of genomic data, is the fact that yes, it's good to have that snapshot in time, and yes, whether they were eating a certain bread at that time point. But what we actually want to know is when they started eating the bread, what happened in between, and when they ended. They do, but it's more that the stages sort of leading up. We never quite have enough of the data. So, for example, there's the Integrated Human Microbiome Project, which tracks several IBD patients over time. But the problem is that for some patients you have all 7 time points perfectly recorded, and for other patients you have the middle, something happened, they didn't turn up on that day, and then you have to start guessing. So the nice thing about Biobank is it's big enough, but it's still not bigger. What was the stat they said? They asked for 500,000 because they couldn't get 1 million.
Out of 50,000 patients they had when they started the cohort, how many of those actually developed breast cancer? Wouldn't be that many, or testicular cancer even rarer. So then you've only got say 20 patients with testicular cancer. That's not a large enough gene pool to actually do any real analysis on. It's too little, so not a great use. The other option would be to take 20,000 patients with breast cancer, 20,000 patients with controls, and look at the variants of the 20,000 patients with breast cancer in the BRCA1 gene, for example. You would see about 100 variants, of which you would probably find 4 or 5 causative variants in that gene. Now, that would be a much more focused way of trying to ascertain, because what you want to do is find the causative variants.
So are we collecting too much data too broadly, and we need to be a bit more focused?
As you said, it depends on what you're looking at. So if you're but I'm more coming from the complex disease side of things. So something like IBD or in certain extensions, there's rare disease again, but Alzheimer's and dementia, etc., where we know it's not just one of the omics levels that are driving it. It's not just a variant that leads to the it's this combination of variants. It's okay, we have these variants, these microbes, these.
It could be many sub-diseases. So.
No, I mean, I'm just thinking with these very long-term diseases, is it just a question of time?
Yeah.
Is it just you've got to wait for the results to happen, and then once you've got that kind of duration of information, then people will it will just become part of the culture that people submit their, that they submit their genetic information just generally as a thing, and it will just be accepted once you've got that time period.
Yeah, I absolutely agree that it's gonna slowly become accepted as people learn more about it, and we really need to focus on the teaching. We need to go. Final comment. Love to give my genome to the NHS, but I'm not allowed to. I can't. There's no way to do it. I'm not old enough for UK Biobank, and I haven't found another way in order to give my data to the NHS.
That's a brilliant final comment.
Wouldn't it be again as a final thought, as you were saying, if everyone wants to do 23andMe, so why doesn't the NHS just say we'll sequence you, and in return we'll give you it's just a biobank. Yeah, exactly. But as you said, it would be finding someone to sequence them at that price.
To opt out, obviously, if you don't want your genome checked. But I think routinely, when you have your other routine, in the future, as the price comes down, if the price gets to a level where it's relatively cheap, then there's no reason why GP surgeries or anywhere should be able to check your genome.
But then you have to go to the GP surgery to do that.
To a chemist, like you have your cholesterol checked or your diabetes, your blood checked. Just go to the chemist, have your genome checked.
These are some brilliant final thoughts. Thank you very much, Matthew. Thank you, Agatha. There we go.
Very good. And you are a medic
Fantastic. I mean, Vinny, are you also? There we go. Well, I mean, I don't know whether people want to join us. We've had Matthew and Agatha here who are trying to campaign for an NHS 23andMe, one where we can actually give our data away.
I think your question about marketing is really a valuable one, because obviously 23andMe, they've invested a little bit in marketing. And why do the NHS, and especially their more research-focused departments, not think about something like marketing a bit more?
Maybe we need to spend a bit more on NHS marketing. They do a lot already. Maybe we need more if we're actually going to harness just less flu jabs, more genomic sequencing. That's what we want from the NHS these days. That is the future. I mean, we've got few people sat down. There's a person in a yellow T-shirt looking at the careers board. Maybe they want to come and join us, tell us about whether they think genomic sequencing is important for everyday use. We've got some iPad users. Maybe they want to look up from their iPad and come and join us. I don't know. We might need a new topic of the Talkaoke table. I'm not too sure. What do you think, Mikey?
Well, we could just have a break from talking about genomics for a while, and maybe talk about. Well, why don't we talk about coronavirus? That seems to be in the news at the moment. There is a virus that's supposedly threatening to come and be a global pandemic. So. Are you worried about getting coronavirus? No, okay. But I don't know. Maybe I don't know. I'm sure Vinny's got something to say about it. No.
About what?
That we're talking about coronavirus.
Okay.
Is it? I mean, I don't know. Look at.
Some very extreme views on it yesterday.
Yeah, we did, didn't he? He did, yeah.
About survival of the fittest. He was talking about it was actually a good thing that the aging population should be bumped off, and actually coronavirus is part of the. It's a bit like wildebeest. The wildebeest in Africa, predator-prey models. I don't know if you've done that at university, but what you do is you can see the old and weak wildebeest. They're killed off by the lions, but the strong, healthy ones live, and they have children, and it means that the DNA stock remains healthy because all the weak ones have all been killed off.
Do we agree with that?
This is what happened. And if they dropped, it was a sign of weakness, and the babies were killed. So only the Spartan Athens, I don't know whether you've read any classical Greek or something, there were both city-states. Sparta was like fascist, where they trained all their military, and survival of the fittest was the important thing. Athens was democratic, and the idea was that Spartans, if they thought the baby was weak, they would hang the baby by a fire on a pole, and if the baby's hand slipped and it fell into the fire, if it was a weak child, it died. So they only wanted the strong children to survive, so that obviously they would have strong offspring as well.
Yeah, so there seem to be these links between maybe concepts of survival of the fittest and maybe fascism as well.
But I think quite often, these ideas get kind of, it's a bit like this selfish gene idea. It kind of, has kind of morphed into the question of neoliberal politics, and how it is kind of survival of the fittest, and those who are the richest are somehow the most valuable members of society.
Interesting, you talk about wealth. In the past, in King Gates' time, it was the reverse. What used to happen was that the rich...
I'm just going to interrupt you for 2 seconds, Vinny. We've got some curious people who think, I would like to just come for maybe 2 minutes. Give us some topics of the Talkaoke table. We're a pop-up talk show. We've been talking about survival of the fittest. Is that applicable to humans? Come and tell us. Bring your coffee here. This is Talkaoke.
Well, I think it's a little bit of a tautological idea in itself, because... how are you defining fittest? If you're defining fittest by your ability to survive, then you're kind of saving survival of the survivors, aren't you? What is that fitness in terms of, if you're a sheep, fitness is being very docile and, you know, being easy to manage as a farm animal. So fitness is a kind of very slippery concept.
But you were saying it used to be the other way round.
Yes, in medieval times, the rich used to eat only meat, nothing but meat, and only poor people ate salads and fruits, and because they were thought for it to be very cheap and not good for you. Now it's the reverse. If you go to Waitrose, all the posh rich people are eating nothing but salads, and it's the poor people who are now eating meat.
Okay, so there's maybe some like diet issues going through, and diet and health and longevity.
In Turkish, there's a saying: if you want to say someone's very poor, you say they're living on bread and olives. Which sounds very middle class. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, and we've been talking about diet. Maybe the Waitrose diet, is it a healthy diet? It's a diet of peasants. Does it make you live longer?
The diets have swapped, so now the rich are eating the poor diet and the poor are eating the rich diet. So
I'm curious, actually, this person in the red coat who's just walking past, are you trying to eat more fruit and vegetables? Come and tell us just for 2 minutes. Oh, you talked to me yesterday. Okay, you're going to give us a topic of conversation. What are we going to talk about on the table chat? There's also a person in a black t-shirt who's very eager behind us to come and join, maybe again for just 2 minutes. Come and sit down, give us some topics to talk about. Check out some careers and tell us about what is the state of the career field in the field of genomics. Like, is everyone here earning millions? Are you all very wealthy?
I'm rich. I'm rich, not in a monetary sense, but in a sense of I've got a lot of friends. I think that's what makes me rich, but also a lot of knowledge as well, and a lot of contacts. So I think that's more important than pure financial wealth.
It's this incredible technology that we now have, and you're wealthy because understanding how these disease processes are working, and even listening to a complex lecture thinking, yeah, I understood that. That's amazing. 6 months ago, I had no clue as to what this professor's talking about. Now I actually understand exactly what they're saying. That is incredible. That they were talking about BRCA1 and breast cancer, and what the professor said was that 75% of BRCA1 variants, mutations, are found in normal cells, in any cell in your body. But there are 25% of cells that are somatic, which means that they occurred spontaneously. So that mutation occurred spontaneously in developed cancer, whereas the other 75% occurred. So the predictive level of actually you checking your cells to see whether you might develop cancer can only be as high as 75%. And that's the point she was making. And I asked her afterwards, is that exactly what you meant? She said, yeah, it's very rare that somebody actually understands what I was talking about. But it was absolutely right. But can you see, that is pleasure. That's wealth, really. I don't think owning 20 Ferraris or something like that can compare to that, really.
Okay, so we've got some thoughts. Maybe Vinny here, who actually was a surgeon, now doing a PhD, because we think that knowledge is more wealth than possessions.
Falling salary or something, 90%.
Okay, so we're saying does the field of genomics, does it pay badly? What do people get from working in the sector? We need some people to come and support Mikey and Vinny over here. We've got Mikey who doesn't, and we've got Rick behind us as well. We're just waiting for some friends and some topics of conversation. I want to talk more about PhDs. I want to talk about people who aren't in science.
He's still giving the lecture.
At the moment, he's talking about aging. He'll be back. Aging in worms. He's more interested in how worms go. I don't know if they go grey when they age, but they're too small really to see. But I don't know what an old worm looks like.
Nematode worm is the first thing you study in biology when you're 15 years old. You think biology is very exciting, and the first month is spent learning about worms. And these worms are very interesting because you can cut them in half, and each half will grow into another worm. So it's quite incredible, really.
So we've got a lot of biologists here. Do biologists like worms? Are you guys a fan of nematode worms? Sorry? Are you guys fans of nematode worms? Come and sit down, tell us. We're at Talkaoke, we need some topics of the conversation. Just have a little break. Come and have a break here.
I think we got to go off of the. We got to talk about something which isn't genomics. We got to talk about let's talk about something completely different, where something. I don't know if you noticed, Evie. I've been trying to steer it away from, mostly because I don't know what I'm talking about when it. I was trying to talk about open source data, but no.
Very well.
Yeah. Anyway, but I don't know.
Thank you very much. Okay, so some people want to talk about open source data, or there may be some thoughts in the coffee line. I think I have lots of thoughts of open source data. You're going to come and tell us all of them once you've got your coffee. I've got Mikey over here with a thought. Come and grab a seat, guys. We need to have some new topics of conversation. I just want to talk about science.
I mean, it might be quite boring, I don't know, but for me it's interesting. There was a guy called Stuart Brand who said, information wants to be free. And I think that's very true. In the end, information does become free because it's a bit like how water flows, you know. In the end, it just is disseminated everywhere. But there's a second part to his quote, which was, information wants to be free, but it's being... I have to Google it. I'll come back to me.
Maybe some other people know the quote that they want to come and help us out with. Does information want to be free? Should we be sharing more of should people share more research? Should people share more of their daily routine?
Hunter.
Hello, what's your name?
I'm called Alex, and I wanted to say sorry if I said anything last night I shouldn't have done.
Never regret saying, that guy that was in the middle last night regrets saying that he hopes that the coronavirus will kill off a whole bunch of old people. He asked me to delete it, and I said, don't worry, no one's going to listen to it anyway. So I would never regret anything you say on Talkaoke because it's just part of the flow.
Yeah. So just...
Je ne regrette rien.
Okay, so we think Mikey thinks it's valuable to have data out there. It's valuable to have mistakes out there as well. Maybe we should be more open about our failures as well as our successes. Where are we going to take this, guys? What is on people's minds?
I think what you could do is the government could step in and say, look, people like Google should have consent before they are allowed to take any personal information, because at the moment you've got no control over who looks at your emails, who looks at your friends list on Facebook or anything like this. If we did that, then I think the public would be much more trusting as far as giving its data is concerned, because they know it's being safeguarded.
If you're getting onto Google, I generally don't mind data going around the world, like tracking me on my mobile phone. That's fair enough. But I do rather resent being tracked on other people's mobile phones when I'm in a photo they take. That seems to me, that is a degree of data that is mine and personal and shouldn't have been given away.
Okay, so maybe we don't mind being tracked on our own phones, but we don't like being tracked on other people's phones?
But, as they say, no man or no person is an island. And like any data, it doesn't even make sense unless it's related to other people's data. For example, Evie in the middle here is an identical twin. So I'm just building this up a little bit, Evie. Her sister Harriet could potentially go rogue on her genetic data and just give it to 23andMe, just like put it online, and there's nothing that Evie could do about it. So I don't think we can just say this is our data and it belongs just to us, be it a phone call. A phone call is also any communication, it belongs to two people, surely.
Twin means that you could hold your other twin genomically hostage, almost. You could say, look, I'm going to give my information and it's the same as yours. So, yeah.
Are you part of a twin study?
Sadly not, no. Only today when I've had lots of questions. No, sadly, not yet. Maybe that's the correct answer to give.
That might be quite lucrative for you, yes.
Oh, so you think twin studies could be lucrative? Do you think people should maybe get a monetary value from participating in studies?
They do in clinical trials, don't they? You get £4,000 or £5,000 if you participate. It's a risk, of course, because obviously there was a medical student from Wales that died from one of these clinical trials. So, but twins will be perfect because you've got a case and control. You've got genetically, as would be approved by Dr. Mengele, twins is from a medical point of view, twins is a perfect case control study. Identical twins.
Identical twins.
Bagsy being the placebo.
Well, I mean, if it depends if it's doing some aging research, then maybe I'd want to be on that. I was kind of curious a bit before we're talking about data and giving it away. I think Vinicius said you need to give your consent. We need to be able to give Google consent to people knowing about our information. What do we think that consent should look like, though?
Well, I mean, my issue with it is exactly the same, but looking at it from the other side, it's like no data just fully belongs to you. Because if it's a phone call, if it's a photograph, does it belong to the person in the photograph or the person taking the photograph? If it's like a group selfie, who does it belong to? It belongs to all of those people, and maybe even the person that invented the phone technology that takes the photograph. So nothing really originates by itself, and so I think the idea of this ownership, it's very it's the product of a very individualist society that we live in, that you personally own this stuff, and I just think it's a bad way to look at it. It's kind of the only way, because that's the world we live in, but I think it's a bad way to look at data.
If you take that argument to its logical conclusion, there is nothing about you that is confidential. Ergo, your whole medical record can go on the internet, and I think that just isn't acceptable.
Okay, so think maybe if we have a whole medical record available for anyone on the internet to see, it's unacceptable. Why do we think it's unacceptable?
Well, simply because, I mean, you might have some personal information about you might have HIV information or something like that that you don't really want your entire family and your aunts and uncles to know about. And also, as I said to you, if you broke up with an ex-girlfriend or something, Facebook have that number, and then it's quite possible that you may get a Facebook request. All I'm saying is there are times when you don't want to contact somebody, or it could be tricky for your new girlfriend to find that you've had a friend request from can you see? There are times when, although Facebook are trying to be helpful, that they could land you in a lot of hot water.
Okay, so Facebook needs to think a bit more carefully about how it shares our data. It can put us into uncomfortable situations where we don't...
Your girlfriend picks up your phone, you'll bleep. She picks up your phone and says, oh, you got a friend request from this girl. Oh, I thought you broke up with this girl.
So maybe sharing our data can maybe make or break a relationship. We don't want our data out there because it risks our family life.
I don't think you shouldn't let your girlfriend or boyfriend look at your phone in under any circumstances, I would say. I think that, but I think as well that there has to be a separation between ownership of data and use and control of that data. Is it the same thing? Is it something different?
Okay, so use and control and sharing are different things. Where do we want to take this? Do you think they are different things?
I don't know, and I've got to go.
Okay, so you need to go. Can you give us any final thoughts, Alex, before you leave?
It's a great singles bar.
I was going to say, out of 100%, I would say about 70% of patients would be helpful, be quite happy to give their data, and all you'd need to do is next time you see your GP is sign a consent form saying, look, I don't mind if the GP sends my data to a university. Obviously, it's going to be a reputable institution, he knows which institution it's going to, then I think that's fine. I think if you're living in Nottingham and you're with a GP, if it goes to Nottingham University, anonymised, and it will help healthcare in the future, then I think most patients wouldn't mind. And that's probably the best way of doing it.
It's already happening. That's already happening. No, it's already happening. Anonymised data is shared. Yeah.
But is there any consent?
I think if you're living in Nottingham, you've got bigger things to worry about, really, than where your data's going. No offence to anyone that lives in Nottingham. Oh, that's Rick's uncle lives there, but anyway. But I mean, like, say going back to this thing about the data, if you on Facebook, I've got lots of friends that refuse to be on any social media because they don't want people. But sadly, those social media companies know about you as well because you've got friends who are on social media, and unless you've got no friends, then they won't know about you. But you both have to refuse to go on social media and have no friends to be a non-person these days.
Yes.
Okay, so maybe we need to be more anonymous. Maybe we want to be more anonymous, but that's actually impossible. Maybe we should just embrace the void and be open. Even share your phone with your boyfriend or girlfriend. Maybe that's the way to go. Be completely honest.
Well, you see, if you have a suspicious girlfriend, then you know she will look and see. It's true. She will look and see who's been sending. I said, well, I had nothing to do with this. You know, I had no contact with her.
Suspicious partners. Do they have a right to your data?
There is a difference. If your girlfriend looks at your phone surreptitiously without your consent, then she cannot challenge you on any of the information. She can look at the information, but she can't challenge you on that data because she wasn't supposed to have looked at the phone. So it is actually still different than just saying, hey, here's my phone, do what you want with it.
Okay, so it's a breach of trust. That is the issue of sharing. So we need to be able to trust that our data. Do we trust that the data that we're giving out is good? Do we want to move on from talking about trust in data? Do we want to talk about trust in healthcare? Do we want to talk about something completely random? And anyone who's been listening in and thought, you know what, this is not a topic that has been discussed yet. What are we thinking?
Well, I just want to stick on this thing about the access to, partners' access to telephones, because I've had an issue with this, and I do think it's out of order. I don't think it's right to look at somebody else's phone. I think that will become more of a thing in the future, like, that's your own personal space, although it's actually just full of communication with other people. But what that communication is, I think, is a very private thing, isn't it?
Yeah, if you're living with somebody, she's charging your phone, you're charging her phone, the phones are just there. If they're not encrypted, then if it just goes ping and it says friend request, blah 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 blah, I'm thinking, hang on a minute. And the same thing would happen to me if I picked up her phone and it went, who is this guy? Sending her a request. But it's not him. It's just Facebook trying to connect people.
A new face at the table. Could you just introduce yourself?
I'm Bobby Ivanov. Nice to meet you.
Bobby.
Yes, Bobby.
We've been talking about data sharing for your genomics, and then we sort of went on data sharing in general, how comfortable we are on it. We're talking about partners and phones and whether other people have a right to look at your phone. Sort of like a natural extension of, I guess, privacy and data sharing. You guys have just had some thoughts. Mikey's very anti other people looking at your phone without consent. Have you got any thoughts on this?
Wow. Well, so first of all, I need to say that I come probably from a completely different part of the industry like you guys. So I'm not a scientist. So it's been an absolute bliss for me to be here because it's so many amazing things. I feel like back to university. It's incredible. I mean, I see a device that you have worked your entire life and I'm mind blown. Oh my God, what are these amazing things that are happening here? I actually work part of one of the big consulting companies called Accenture, but that's the parent, that's the huge $500,000 multi-billion partner. I'm actually part of a little agency within the big group, which it's all around experiences. And by experience, I mean patient experience. So we specialize the clients that we advise and the companies that we work with, including the NHS and other genomics companies, and it's all about what can we do together and not lose track from the patient at the end of that entire journey. So my biased opinion would be that if I'm thinking about them and their perspectives, if they're not comfortable sharing their information, we shouldn't. This said, being completely human, we keep on signing for things that we never read the terms and conditions for. And we're sharing so much of our data already, but I think we've been a little bit ignorant because we can see what we're getting for it. I'm just clicking in terms of condition and I suddenly have this amazing app in front of me. So I'm happy with it. and I'm happy to share my data until someone releases something in the paper that suddenly my data is being compromised.
Oh, so maybe types of consent and benefits are quite an important communication tool.
I mean, I think this comes to sort of like a fundamental understanding of consent. Consent isn't a one-off thing, and it should never be. Consent should be retractable or givable. And I think this is one of the issues with the terms and conditions. You sign the terms and conditions, and then that's it. Or you sign the consent form, and then there's. But I think you should be able to change your mind, or retract your consent, or come up with a different thing. It's got to be dynamic.
What you could do is have an NHS website where you can log in, and then if you want to withdraw your consent, you should be able to do so, and then that data will be taken out.
So it's a two-way street. It needs to be constantly. It's a dynamic thing.
Yeah, and it's almost like, there used to be these apps that kept on coming up saying, these are all the things that you've signed up for. Are you sure you want to keep on signing up for them? Maybe the NHS can release something like, these are all the companies that are using your health data. Are you still sure that you want to give your health data to them? But I think I think we're reaching naturally that point, because more and more big breaches happen, more and more people got stressed, more and more people are starting to realize how much money companies are making from their data, and they feel robbed. It's like, hold on, but that's my data. Why am I not getting something out of it when you're already making so much out of it?
I see my neighbour's house has now been blacked out on Google Street. You can now look at. You're obviously curious to look at your own house, so you look at, and I noticed. They've obviously written to Google saying, please black out our house for some. Yeah. It's all blurred. I don't know why. It looks like every other house on the street, but you can do that. So presumably you can go to Google and say, please black out my house. I don't want anyone looking at my house. Thank you very much.
And what are the ramifications for that? If everyone else's house is on Google and you blur yours out, what does that say about you? Do you know? Is that a different form of data exchange?
No idea, literally no idea. I mean, where I live, no one's got their house blurred out. But it's probably less posh. It's in Hackney.
But it's the only house on the whole street that's just blanked out. So it probably actually attracts more attention to the house than it would otherwise.
Okay, so there might be these ways that you can hide data. Is anyone trying to actively hide data in their lives? So we've just been talking about the fact we give it away so freely. Does anyone here try and hide it or protect yourself?
It's called VPN something, and you can, if you join that website, you pay a fee every month. You can bypass the normal system, and you can have your data all secret. None of the data will be available to Google. So there are companies that will do that.
More and more people are using DuckDuckGo, which is, that's very clear, saying we're not making money out of advertising, we're not selling your data, what you do is completely up to you. And
I went on to DuckDuckGo, but I found it very. I didn't find its search results very enlightening, to be honest. I mean, I hang around with a lot of people that are really sensitive about this question about data and privacy and tracking, and they all do all sorts of things like, the VPN, the virtual private network, and Tor browsing, which is where onion ring browsing, where you kind of bounce your IP address to various parts. Yeah, exactly.
Interesting. You can see all the Japanese.
Yeah, but I don't know really what the point of it is. I think it's just like a bit paranoia, really.
Okay, so you think maybe any kind of active data privacy at the moment, it's just paranoid, doesn't really do anything. Maybe it's like putting your stuff in the recycling.
I think it's a lot about habit. It's like, but I'm so used to do it. Suddenly that's something you have to think about, and it's still not natural for everyone to pick it up. But there's also a question around what you said. I want to use DuckDuckGo, but it's actually not so useful to me. So then there's this battle in your head. Do I keep on using this and giving my data away when I'm clearly going to get something much better out of it? Or do I go somewhere where I keep my data secure, but I have to go on page 7 until I find out what I need? And that's really hard, because I think people would really easily go back to Google because they're used to the result being the top place, and suddenly that data, because it's not immediate in your face consideration, it just starts falling backwards for convenience and speed.
I mean, I kind of agree with that. Like, I use Facebook all the time. I'm well aware of what they're using that how they're selling that information. But am I really thinking about things like Cambridge Analytica, where they're actually influencing political decisions? And recently in the latest election, giving, promoting really actual false facts as part of an electoral campaign, and I'm just happily scrolling through and enjoying, people's posts. I'm not really thinking about the actual huge social ramifications that these unregulated social media companies have. I'm sort of a bit, maybe I should be more concerned, but it's just not how it seems to work.
Okay, so we're not concerned about. There's a bit of a cost benefit. Maybe we're not that concerned about it, or we use it anyway because it's the best possible option. Where are we going to go from here?
I just think we're not rational people. So, like, if I really sat down and thought about it, I would probably go, no, actually, Facebook's really evil, and they work with really evil people to do really evil things. But actually, I'm not rational, and I just go, I actually use Facebook to like when I wake up in the morning, I'm checking all the posts and the rest of it.
We've got some new faces at the table. We've got over here Hortense. Can you say that one more time? Hortense. Hortense. And then we've got
Bobby.
Vinny.
Mikey.
My name's Evie. Potentially the person in the coffee queue is going to come and join us. We're discussing, do you think Facebook's evil? Not on Facebook. Okay, so we've got some people. Maybe once you got your coffee, come and tell us why you're not on Facebook.
There's no such thing as not on Facebook. You may not have a page, but they know about you.
Are you on Facebook?
Yes, I am.
Generally, are you quite happy being on a social media platform? Do you feel like you've given enough consent for the data? Is it something that worries you?
I believe it's quite interesting that everybody is worth $500, dollars for each profile made, and we don't receive anything. Yeah, but actually it's not working like that. Obviously, I think it's a way for people to express themselves, but obviously, I think it's not the most interesting social media platform happening today. Maybe Instagram would be, definitely. This is visual, generally more polished visuals. It's not only just talks and words that don't really make any sense. I don't know, I believe an image speaks more than words sometimes.
So maybe
Instagram is still owned by Facebook, so
yes, yeah. So they're a big. They've just morphed, perhaps,
to the evil master. I think it's also a shift of. Different generations prefer different social medias, and that's why. You had the Facebook, and then it moved into Instagram, and then it's moving into Snapchat, etc. But
come on, guys, what social media platforms do you use? Come and tell us. None of them. All of them. TikTok as well. Come and sit down with us. We're just talking about data privacy. We're talking about social media. We've been talking about genomic privacy before. Come on, guys. Come and tell us what you've been using. Vinny, before you go, you need to give us a final thought. He's coming back for a coffee. Can I get a round of names?
Danny.
Matthew.
Hortense.
Bobby.
Mikey.
And we've got Othos over here. She's saying that Instagram is the new big power in social media. That's the one we need to be worried about. Bobby is quite cynical about all of them. We've got a new face on the table as well.
I need to get that back to my colleague in a moment. I'm James.
Okay, so where are we going to take this, guys? Most people think that social media is evil, but they're still on it.
As I was saying before, I think it comes back to the whole point. There's no such thing. No man is an island. Sorry, it's a sexist way of saying it, but no data exists alone. It's part of it's part of a set of data that any phone call, any interaction is between at least two people, if not more. And it's the same also with the genetic data. It's not just belonging to one person, such as you. Your genetic data also belongs to your identical twin. Evie's an identical twin. So I just think actually this data should really be shared all between us and controlled all between us as well.
Do you agree? Are you guys ready to share all of your data with everyone?
Try to take it all in a wee bit here. We can get more of the backstory. So you think it's evil? I'd like to hear why he thinks it's evil, social media.
No, it is. There's a reason for why it exists, so I wouldn't call it necessarily evil because, I mean, it wouldn't be there if it was too evil. I mean, alcohol is evil, but it's still there, right? It's a necessary evil in our life. I think social media is a necessary evil, but I've seen it firsthand with my parents. I mean, they do actually have Facebook friends that they chat more about, but when because they're kind of getting older and they're not feeling too old, so they're not going out too much. So they're actually having fun chatting with their friends also. So I see the actual benefit. You know, us earlier it was like, oh my God, they're not your real friends. You're not going out with them. Stop pretending they're your real friends. But you start seeing how they're actually quite close. I was just thinking that we're nearing a time and place where they're earning so much money from your personal data. It would be nice to share some of that back in some way of sort. It's like, for example, if you buy a new pair of shoes from ASOS because Facebook targeted you and that made Facebook $2, can you not get 10 cents out of it? So you get some money back from the ad that they've targeted you through all your personal data that they hold.
What do we think of this scheme? What do you reckon?
Well, James is not on Facebook. Or are you on any social media? And why do you avoid it?
Okay, so I have been on Facebook for probably about 5-6 years, and I binned my Twitter account about 12 months ago. And I think when you're on, if you rely too heavily on the social media aspect, you lose the ability to communicate with an actual human being. You start becoming almost a digital slave, if you will. You stop being able to communicate on a human level, and any intonation that you have within a conversation gets lost. Particularly within the English language, you have 3 or 4 different words that will have 3 or 4 different meanings, but all have the same spelling. You lose any context. So an argument can't be made in 140 characters, or 280, I think Twitter is now. Facebook has just become a data mining machine to people's opinions, and not all opinions are based on anything that is founded in any sort of educational reason. So I found that when I got rid of Twitter, it was because I was waking up angry and going to bed angry. So that's why I got rid of them. The only one I do have now is Instagram, and I think it's because you control the content that goes on. You control what you see and who you see and what goes on there.
Do you not think you're taking it a bit serious though then, if you're like going to bed angry and waking up angry? Should we not be like taking it with a pinch of salt and thinking, right, well, that's someone's comments, but it's not like real life and I don't have to like react?
So maybe we should disengage from our social media? What do we think?
I mean, I think part of the reason why it's kind of this anger generating thing is because they promote the posts that get the most reactions rather than the posts that are the most sensible or clever or learned. It's like the most outrageous always comes to the top, and that's an engineering question, and they've done that deliberately to maximize engagement, but it's also very antisocial.
Thanks.
Yeah, I agree completely. And it comes down, I mean, I can relate to a scenario that was only last week. Friday afternoon, I had the Jehovah's Witnesses knock on my door at home. Now, I'm openly atheist, I don't mind admitting that, but I was able to engage with 2 people that have a completely different set of beliefs that I do at a human level that was non-confrontational. You do exactly the same on social media, and it's very, very easy for your keyboard to get away from you. Now, I agree with your point, Matthew, about taking it too seriously and shouldn't we all take it with a pinch of salt. But when you've got idiots like Donald Trump tweeting at 2 o'clock in the morning at 1,000 characters at a time, spewing the kind of rhetoric that he does, he's supposed to be the leader of the free world, he's supposed to be the man that sets the example, yet regardless of who you do and do not follow on whatever social media platform you have, you are permanently exposed to it. You can't escape it, and I've found the only way for me personally, and it's only my opinion, to get away from it is to switch it off completely. And you know, I'm not saying that social media is inherently bad. But I think it's got to the stage now where it does as much harm as it does good. And until, I don't want it to see it regulated. I don't think you can take away a person's freedom of speech. You can't take away a person's right to be a moron. But you have to be able to separate yourself out from that kind of content, and when it's forced on you in a way that you have no control over, it becomes problematic, and that's the issue I think we're dealing with at the moment.
So there'll be some themes about control maybe over social media, and that the only way to control it maybe with Twitter is to remove yourself.
Yeah, and about control, I think it's about your self-control towards like this social media. So obviously, if like Donald Trump is posting something at 2 a.m., he doesn't have much control of like his own thought system and how it goes through to internet, and how it will be connecting people through his social medias. Go on.
Pause, you guys, just before you go. Final thoughts.
I mean, in terms of social media, I don't really agree with what you were saying. I don't think it turns people into zombies or anything. It's just like, for example, too much of anything is bad, right? So if you drink a little bit of alcohol, it's fine, you know, you go out for fun. But once you become an alcoholic, then it becomes a problem, right? Same thing with social media. I mean, you can go find your old friends, your family, you can keep in touch with whoever. Like, yeah, sure, if you're following negative content, it's going to make you think negatively, and you're going to be mad, and you're going to be angry. If that's how, you know, if that's the type of content you're following. If you're following Donald Trump and he makes you angry, maybe don't follow Donald Trump. You know? But it's just not like, I mean, it's just that. I feel like it's what you make of it, and it's, in terms of social media, I think it's good. It's exposing the world to different types of things that you wouldn't think you had the capability to see or to even touch. Like, you see a lot of communities being built online, you know, for example, mental health. There's a lot of, it's being exposed a lot, it's being more talked about now than it previously was. So I feel like those are some positives to take out of it. So I don't think it's all bad, and it's what you make of it. So
It's what you make of it. There's some communities. Matthew, do you have any final thoughts before you go? What job are you going to get?
Just quickly, I don't know. I think the kids are the big concern. I think kids are on social media too much these days, and I think that's going to be a problem in the future. Thanks.
Thank you very much for your final thoughts. Others, we were talking about control before, and you didn't quite get to finish your point. You need to go too. I'm going to pause you there. I'm so sorry. We will be back to you though. James, final thoughts.
I agree with what they were just saying about how social media can bring people together. I do think we have to be wary about the content that's on there, how it's not controlled or regulated, because I don't like the idea of that, but I think it has to be, I think as an individual you have to have a better way of monitoring the content that you see. Our friend over there made a comment about, if you don't like the stuff that Donald Trump is spewing, get rid of him. Well, I never followed him, but by 6 degrees of separation, people that I followed were able to put content onto my Twitter timeline that were coming from Donald Trump that I had no interest in, but you've no way of blocking that. I think within social media platforms, all of them, not just Twitter, not just Facebook, but you've got Instagram, you've got TikTok, you've got Reddit, you have to be able to say, no, I don't want to see posts that have come from X, Y, and Z source. You don't want to see either retweets or refollows or likes. You should be able to control your own content. And the reason why we're seeing the likes of Facebook make so much money through targeted advertising is because they've taken that level of control of your own platform away from you. And I think that's the bit where you need to get back to.
Thank you very much. That's very.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go for Ursula.
No, I mean, I guess it has been kind of said by David. I don't remember his name exactly, but like it's just about the control the self-control people have with the way they use the social medias, and reversely, like it really depends on like the times. They can use it for entertainment as they can use it for looking for jobs or surveys or like connecting friends. So it's really about how to use the tool the best way possible, basically, I think.
Yes, no, closing thoughts. Closing thoughts. We all have a choice what to do and where to be and where not to be. And that there is a point. I mean, I think if we want to erase completely our digital self, It's getting easier and easier in Europe, not necessarily around the world. In Europe, it's getting to that point. The issue is when you decide to disconnect, not being given the choice to completely disconnect and disappear from the digital world is something we need to address. And the second thing that I think Matthew mentioned was, yes, we can leave those kind of poisonous social media that we disagree with, but there's also responsibility for the younger people, which might not find it that easy to disconnect from them because of social pressure at high school or middle school. I don't even know at what age kids nowadays are on social media, but they are the more sensitive ones, and we should be worried for them because we can make a choice to say yes or no to it, but some of us might not have that choice.
Again, so thinking about the younger generations.
I mean, to be honest, I actively seek out people that I disagree with on Facebook just to find out what they're saying and try to... And I very rarely actually comment on their posts because I just don't want to get into a conversation, because sometimes on social media it just doesn't work. But you can find out people think all kinds of things about vaccines, about Zionists, about, you know, the Rothschilds or something like that, or the moon landings are fake, or NASA is a bunch of liars, or all sorts of things. And to me it's interesting to find out why they think these kind of things. Why are people obsessed with posting stuff about the Earth being flat? I don't know. I don't think engaging on social media is the best way of doing it. I think probably having a conversation around the table like this might be better. But it's still, I find it interesting. I don't really get annoyed by those, you know, sometimes inflammatory comments that people make, because it's just, you know, water off a duck's back to me.
Okay, so maybe there's some power of knowing what people you do disagree with think, and actually maybe not giving them a platform, but at least listening. I think it looks like we're coming to the end of our middle Talkaoke session, or the final Talkaoke session, quarter past. But have we got any? We've not got people. So, but I think we should have some final thoughts before we go, and then maybe we do a quick swap around for a power Talkaoke at the end. We'll see how it goes. Others, have you got any final thoughts?
On Facebook or social medias in general, right?
Yeah, anything that we've talked about at the table today.
I'm really wondering what's gonna happen in the future. I feel like what I would wish is like I use it for once and then like I take the best out of it, and I could like actually like wait for what's happening in 20 years about these medias. I'm not sure. I'm interested to see a lifetime displayed online. But I want to see how it's going to look like later on and how people are going to use it. Holograms and stuff like this, you never know.
Yeah. I like that, yeah. So thinking about a lifetime online, what is that going to look like in the next, I don't know, few years, 10 years?
I mean, I think it's actually a new historical phase, because we've got all this data about ordinary people and what they're doing from about 2005 onwards. And if you think about it historically, that's a huge leap in understanding how people lived and what they were thinking about that we just don't have before 2005. And it's almost going to be like post-Facebook, pre-Facebook. It's going to be like a historical age in the future. And that, I mean, those people that are not in the digital world are kind of going to be invisible to that, but there'll be very few and far between, I think.
Excellent. Well, I think we're gonna pause the Talkaoke for now. But if you're curious and want to have a power 10 minutes of Talkaoke in a moment, come and gather round. We're coming up to your last choice to join in. We'll have
it's your last chance.
Last chance to join in, guys. So if you have been sitting here all day and you thought, oh gosh, maybe you've been at the cafe and you thought, I've got a break coming up and I want to actually join in some fun, please come and join us at the pink table of chat. But for now, thank you very much to everyone who's joined us.